I am Joshua K. Sabra, Esquire, and he is Dr. Miles Salisbury. And you are listening to the Miles Ahead podcast, where we share tactics, techniques, and protocol to improve your physical, mental, and spiritual health while you walk the path of the warrior. Stay tuned. In today's podcast, Dr. Miles and I discuss the most common pitfalls that get in the way of anyone's health and fitness progress, especially if that person's over 40. We're going to talk about injuries, we're going to talk about kids, and we're also going to talk about more esoteric stuff like adrenal fatigue. So stay tuned. And we're live, coming to you from downtown Lake Oswego, the hustling, bustling metropolis with the...
Horses?
I was trying to get a rhyme with opolis. Yeah. Metropolis with the hardtopolis. I don't know.
The workout you just ran, so there's no way we have the cognitive brain power to do this right now, which is a good segue to what we're going to talk about today. But
that's right, man. That was part of the motivation. Is it felt so good, and it was both hard and easy. You know, like it wasn't like we were crushing a lot of weight.
Deceptive.
That tricep one was crazy. It was like 15 pounds, and you're just tearing up. But it helps. So that's how you mobilize tissue. We're going to talk about that. What are you listening to?
Group Love, the band, and my favorite song there is called Hollywood. It's phenomenal. All their shit's good, but that song is like really fucking good.
What genre is it?
I don't know. Alternative, I guess.
Oh.
I never know what genre. I'm a genreless kind of guy, so.
To me, alternative is alternative rock.
Yeah, I have no idea anymore. It's too hard to put the kind of music I listen to. It's really hard to like. It belongs in like 4 different baskets depending on what song they play. It's weird. Most of it, some of it not, but most of it, yeah.
Yeah, I found that like I lived in the grunge, and then what became kind of grunge punk compilations in the 90s, or not compilations, sounds in the 90s, like Weezer.
Oh yeah, and then became alternative rock.
Yeah, mm-hmm. And it kind of led into that, and
Nirvana.
Yeah, I was gonna say, well, Nirvana. You said so. I went Trent Reznor. You went Kurt Cobain. I went Trent Reznor.
And Inch Nails, good shit too.
He produces so much stuff. But so the last thing I listened to, which is funny because my girlfriend listens to this podcast, is "In Your Eyes" by Peter Gabriel.
Oh, okay, we're going further back.
And it's she just recently had a corrective surgery. I'm sure I'm not supposed to out her, but she's going to talk about it for a lot of people. But anyway, she had a corrective surgery in her eyes. And so when she was taking off the bandages, I had that song playing.
Look at you, set it up. Nice.
So it was good. She'll never forget that song now.
Did it get dusty in the room?
It didn't get dusty, but she, it's instant improvement, right? If you go from having no vision past 12 feet or 12 inches to having perfect 2020 or 2015. Mm-hmm. It's amazing.
Yep. It's X-Man vision.
That's right. Well, today we're talking about the things that I talk about all the time with my students and friends, and even with myself, because I'm a person who's very passionate about health and fitness. But today we're talking about the most common pitfalls of fitness over 40. Don't let that mislead you, because all the things that we are going to talk about today can apply to you at any age. In fact, I just turned 40 and have already paid all of the prices for all of these issues. So it's something that starts to happen, I think, when you become an adult, and you have to, or you start to have different reference points for success, which we're going to talk a lot about today. But if you were over 40, then you've already know what I'm going to say with a lot of the stuff. And you probably, if you're not experiencing it now, you will. You will experience it again And it'll be fun because you have kids, you have injuries, you have all this stuff that we're going to talk about today, so you can chime in with your personal experience
Cool.
with this. But the in no particular order, we're just going to run through the most common refrains that my friends say, my students say, my clients say, my the gym going population talks about.
Your parts inside of you say.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot of that's going to come up. But one of the things that I have some recent experience with, and this is kind of what's kicked off my whole career in fitness, was being too injured to lift. Now, your injury list might be different than mine, and everybody is a little bit different. But when someone says that they're too injured to lift, I'm really curious, because that can mean something like an elbow tendonitis that is an inconvenience, and certainly something that must be addressed to continue good strong function of the upper limbs. And sometimes it's something like a surgery. They're recovering from a surgery, like a rotator cuff surgery, or they have a back injury. Back injury is like a catch-all for things to get you out of almost any kind of activity, because almost every activity involves your back to some degree. So it's very unpleasant. And if you've never heard this before, let me share it with you now, because I'm always shocked at what people do not know and haven't heard before. But when you're injured, especially with a back injury, but any injury, movement is medicine. I've had many friends who've had back injuries, and then they sat on the couch and they would literally lie in bed thinking like, oh, my back will recover
if I just rest it.
And it makes it worse. It makes it worse because you shorten muscles, you change the joint mechanics of the vertebral spaces change. And then when you go back to move, you're like, oh no, I feel like I was just in another car accident. And you have to start all over. Sometimes you have to start over from a less functional place. So movement is medicine when it comes to injuries, and especially the back. Now, obviously not like the day you get out of the hospital,
right,
but sometimes it is.
It's like just walking.
Yeah. Like, I think Jocko talked about his neck surgery, and for like 3 days he was in a neck brace, and he was like literally just lying on the couch, staring up at the sky. And he's like, this is hell.
Yeah. I was going to say that's probably pretty hard for him.
But, by the end of the first week, he's doing neck exercise, he's trying to restore mobility, and you don't want to steal the heel. You don't want to go too fast on an injury, but but you must move. And that's important. So movement is medicine. And if you were too injured to lift or exercise, I would reach out to somebody that you trust who's in the medical field, or a physical therapist, or
you want to name drop Grant, since we're going to have him on?
Sure. Grant Headley's been a great resource for me. But if you're in the Lake Oswego area, great.
Body Listener. That's what he's under.
The Body Listener.
He's really good. And he also climbed Mount Adams with us and kicked our asses, which was pretty amazing, because we're like big jack dudes, and he's not tiny, but he just smoked us. Like,
well, that's his whole thing, is he's got endless endurance. He's a monster of endurance. But he was even second guessing his life choices, which has made me happy. And also made me happy to hear that he didn't want to go to the top, because I might have been able to be pulled along, but I was too dangerous. We were out of water.
We were dumb enough to the point to just finish it off, because it was just right there, but we had no water. We would have been eating snow on the way down.
God.
Anyways, shout out to good physical therapist. He'll be on the podcast at some point and have a lot to say about a lot of things.
That's right. Movement is medicine. So the injury thing is important. And a lot of times when this is going to segue into the next pitfall, which is ego lifting or ego training. If you're a runner, having a reference point for your times, and like how fast you should run or how much weight you should lift, sort of a performance aspect. But when you have an ego about it, in the weight room, ego lifting is, oh, well, I curl 40s. I always curl 40s. And I think I've helped you and Larissa. Anybody I see who's really not really doing any good work with the curl, I try to put them in a place where their mechanical tension is higher. And all of a sudden, people wake up, like their heart rate goes from 100 to 150 when they have to start really pumping blood through those biceps. And it's not about the weight on the bar, it's about the weight on the muscle. And I can tell when someone is like in the middle of a conversation and they're, they're kind of mailing it in.
They can just keep up the conversation and not really focus.
They're not really present with what's happening in their body because it's not intense, because it's not mechanically advantageous for them to lift like that. Mm-hmm. So ego lifting for me is like having a sense of how much weight has to be on the bar, the squat, right? Whether you're doing a squat or a bench press or, anything. And it really, the weight, not that it doesn't have anything to do with the exercise, because you should be able to bench press much more than you should curl, right? So there's some scaling, some relative scales there. But I think today I even mentioned it to you that like my numbers went down on most of the exercises, and it was hard. Like it was so hard, and it felt really good. But
it's almost a better metric of feedback for you.
Yes, but the presence that you have with your own body.
Rate of perceived exertion, all that.
Rate of perceived exertion, and also a sense of, so like, we're going to talk about exertion here. Maybe it's in this one, or maybe it's in the hard training. We'll talk about hard training in a second. But RPE is important because, if you're doing cardio, you should know this is zone 5 where I'm really gassed, or zone 2 where I could do it almost indefinitely.
The phoning in.
You should know. Well, you want to phone it in on zone 2.
On zone 2,
yeah. You want to be able to
stay phoning.
So being able to be present with your own body. Where's the tension versus the numbers that you're seeing, and a lot of times people have numbers on the scale that they need to hit. They have numbers on the bar that they need to hit, and they're really attached to these things from the past. So when I used to box, and when I was a middleweight fighter, I was around 162 to 155, depending on the day, and I was 5'10". Well, I'm 5'10" now, and I'm 194, and if I thought like, oh, my fighting weight was 155, well, I don't know what I would have to do to get down. I'd have to do the freaking machinist diet and just drink a protein shake a day and
intermittent fast.
Yeah, just not intermittent fast, just be in a hypocaloric diet for months on end. But I don't want to do that, and it wouldn't feel good anyway. But my metric now is, I want to have a body fat around 10 or 12%. I want to have a lot of energy and really good sleep. And those are the 3 most important things to me because of longevity, or rather health span. Feeling good, like feeling energetic. Like I was 211 a few months ago. I'm much lighter now. I feel completely different. Feel so much better.
Do you have a good way to measure body fat for folks that don't want to do the old fashioned caliper? Maybe not really accurate measurement?
Well, good luck with the calipers. Yeah. So the lowbrow way to do it is just look at your height to waist ratio. So, I'm being super heuristically now, but if you want to do it as simply keeping your waist under 40 for a guy, under 35 for a woman is like extremely, ballparky. But if you want a really precise way to do it, the DEXA scan.
I was going to say DEXA, yeah. That gets everything. That's a good
bone density, yeah, visceral fat, important stuff.
I haven't done one yet. I would like to.
Yeah, they're useful, very useful. So now having the getting away from ego lifting and getting more into your body and into what's really going on, understanding what the metrics are of success for your exercise. And what that does is that also takes the pressure off, because if you can be successful with a 12-pound curl, then who cares if someone else is curling 40 pounds? If you're feeling it burning and you're getting a pump and you're getting that like sweat going, great, you win. it's actually lower risk to lift less weight, so it doesn't matter, right?
And you won't get hurt probably.
Oh yeah, an injury. Oh yeah, injuries go down for sure. And then another one is functional paralysis. Is I think the technical term for this. Functional paralysis is in life when like you can't fix you can't fix something in your house because you don't have the right you don't have a standard screwdriver.
Oh.
But if you had a nickel or a dime, you could turn the screw. But your brain, you learned how to turn in screws with screwdrivers, and a lot of people don't have the creative thinking to realize that, oh, this will also work with a different implement as long as I have another implement like that in the house. And the way that works for fitness is like, if you learned on like barbells and dumbbells, you might not know that you can get a crushing workout with a body weight workout. You have to have some skill, and some practice.
Be good to mix it up like that.
It's great to mix it up like that. Also, like a workout has to take an hour. I try to keep my workouts to 45 minutes or less.
Yeah, I keep hearing that. Like, unless you're a bodybuilder, you don't really need to be there for 3 hours, right?
Even if you are,
like you still, yeah.
Like with
well,
I guess okay. If you're juiced to the hilt, then your nervous system can handle a lot more stress.
That's true. Yeah.
But like, yeah, even if you are somebody who is a performance athlete, even in the NFL, they don't spend, depending on the team and the cycle, who's the strength
and
coach
the sports,
But in the NFL, most of the time, you wouldn't have more than 3 or 4 hours in the weight room in a week.
Right.
So
you got to play still.
Yeah, you're doing sprints, you're doing line drills, you're doing all these things. And so it's like the functional paralysis is like, maybe just because you learned it one way doesn't mean you can't do it 6 other ways. And so that means like, maybe you don't need a weight room. Maybe you can get a great workout in
home gym,
in your home gym, in your garage, in your living room. You could do.
I've done that.
Well, or this is for cardio. I think a lot of people too. It's like, this is especially true for track athletes. They're like, well, I have to, have a track, or I have to be able to sprint. I was like, sprint? Are you joking? Sprint is it's so high risk. It's also short. Like, it takes 30 minutes to warm up to do a sprint workout, or if you're maybe 10 minutes if you're really efficient. But it's like, you could do a lot of other things for cardiovascular fitness besides sprinting.
A lot. Yeah. Norwegian 4x4s, hits, Tabatas, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. And so there's that. This is one of my favorite ones because I see people in person here in Lake Oswego, and I have a small group, semi-private experience where there's like 3 or 4 people working out together. And so I'll talk to somebody who's interested in doing some training. They want to work on nutrition. And this is the problem of the inconvenience tax. And like, a lot of times people are looking for the perfect solution for their life. So I was talking to this woman who wanted to work out early in the morning, but it had to be between 5:15 and 6:30 a.m.
Very specific.
Very specific. And I was like, okay, well, and I recommended a couple places. She's like, oh, I already know about those places. And like, I don't really like the class structure in there. And then I was like, okay, so have you thought about this? And she was like, well, yeah, but I've been to that, instructor, and I could teach a better class. And I'm just picturing in my mind, I'm like, what's your actual goal? Like, right? It has to be the perfect place with the perfect person with the perfect, you don't really want to work out.
What a great way to not have to work out. Yeah. You need to send her to me.
and so people often like will tell me like, well, I need to be at work by this time. And they're like the department head. They decide when the meetings are. Like, they have, authority. They can bump something back or put a stand-in in their place. And it's like, but they don't want to do that because of how it looks. Like,
or they're a micromanager.
Well, we'll get into that. But here's the thing. It's like, well, I want to set an example. And this is the same thing with kids. People are like, well, I have to do this because the kids. Don't you think the people on your team need an example of a manager who He's like, hey guys, I got to get my workout in at 8 a.m. So, Ted's going to take notes. And then if it's something that's really important, then I will come in for that meeting and I will share with you guys what's going on. But other than that, like, I'm taking care of myself. I want you to take care of yourselves. So make sure that you make the time, put it on your calendars. Even if you have to miss a meeting, we'll send you the notes, right?
Decentralized command.
And so there's this, I call it the inconvenience tax. It's like I'm unwilling to get up 15 minutes earlier or move something around in my life, and because I don't want to have to negotiate with other people and make requests. I don't want to have to compromise. And that's what life is. It's a series of like, hey, how could we work this out to make it work for both of us? And what they do is they end up accommodating and not getting their needs met, right? Not actually training, not actually getting the sleep or whatever, what have you. So those things, like, so we're going through, like, essentially I'm attached to the numbers on the bar or how it should look, in the gym. I'm attached to how other people think about me and how other people feel about me in my family or on my team versus how I feel about myself. Right. So there's like a priority shift, or lack of priorities in that regard. And then there's just like the ego. So I wrote down, I could teach a better class because that cued me in on it. But it was really like, a lot of times people say like the workout needs to be harder or harder in a different way. And so I'm going to pick on Orange Theory because people complain about Orange Theory all the time. But it's like they lift weights, but they're not heavy weights. And they sprint, but it's not like a hard sprint. But they do treadmills and rows, and they do weights, and they do, body weight stuff. It's fine. It's fine. Like, they've got heart rate monitors on. I don't know if it's changed in the last 5 years, but had lots of friends go through it, loved it. They've usually good instructors. They got a good system.
You're working out.
Great. And it's like, why does it have to be the perfect, it doesn't really have to be the perfect thing. Now, if you're trying to improve your VO2 max, okay, put a 4x4 on your calendar. Once a week, go out and do a really hard run and then go back to Orange Theory and then do their stuff the rest of the week. If you're trying to improve strength, then okay, get a dumbbell set in your garage or go to a gym twice a week and do some heavier lifting, right? It's really easy to accommodate, whatever's missing with something else, or put a pull-up bar in your house and like really work on, muscle ups or pull ups or whatever. You can adapt, something that's 80% of the way there, still pretty far of the way there, especially if it works with your schedule. And when people say hard, most of the time what they're thinking of is they're thinking like, I need to get hot and sweaty or exhausted.
Yeah, I was going to burn out, leave everything on the field or whatever.
And most of the time, there is a subset of people who that's just how they are, right? But most of the time, I find you can get better results with, instead of going to 101%, going to 91%.
Yeah, if you do that, you might have to like take 3 days rest to come back at first, and then diminishing returns, right?
And I would argue, and in strength training, it's certainly true. And if you train to failure frequently, your performance will go backwards.
You get tired.
Yeah.
You brain fog.
Yeah. And the numbers on the bar will go down. You won't be able to lift, and then you'll start to blame other things. We'll get into adrenal fatigue here in a second. But hard training is overrated. It's much harder in life to do something every day, every week, every month, every year than it is to have one really hard workout or a month of really hard training. And so consistency for me is the actual RPE is true. And like, I'd rather have banged up my shoulder, so I'm going to do some light stuff for my wrist and my, and my arms. And then I'm going to do, a challenging leg day the next day. And I'd rather baby something, but keep moving than wait until I feel better.
Do nothing. Yeah. And then you're keeping that habitual pattern of like, I'm the kind of person that shows up to the gym habit alive.
And the question I always have for people is, what else are you doing? Like, I'm going to name, I like to make fun of Andrew Tate because he's such a cartoon character, but he has this line in one of his videos that he's like, if you're not talking about how to meet women and how to make money, what are you talking about? And he's like,
He's like dead
Serious.
serious. Yeah.
Serious. What are you talking about? Yeah, I don't have a British accent, but that's how I feel about fitness.
Was
I'm
he
like,
English?
he's British, yeah.
I didn't know that.
Nice.
I at least don't listen to him.
Yeah, but my thing is, if you don't have time to exercise or sleep, what do you have time to do if you don't have time to feel good, right? And I'm a recovering workaholic among many other aholics, things that I'm addicted to. So I get it. Like, I don't want to slow down because I want to feel my feelings. But it's that's what's creating the fatigue, is the inability to slow down and inability to take care of yourself. And I speak from experience on this, and we'll get into my story here at the end because we're making great time. But training hard. Okay. We just covered that. Kids dictate the family culture.
Oh, big one. Big one.
So I'm gonna kick this to Miles to riff on for a second. But one of my friends, Jennifer Blankel, she's a relationship coach, and she posts stuff about this all the time. The parents are the most important people in the family. Their health, their relationship, their quality of life is what dictates what happens in the family.
Yes.
And people throw rocks at her, and she's like, if the marriage breaks up, if the mom burns out, if the dad, it burns out, what's going on now, right? That's what creates the problems with the kids, is having parents that are not coping well with their own problems, because the work that you don't do becomes the work that your kids have to do
on so many levels.
So with the tip of the iceberg is, well, I have to have junk food in the house for the kids, or the kids won't want to eat pizza and spaghetti. And the thing that I think about is like, well, yeah, I didn't want to go to junior high. I just wanted to play video games. What does that have to do with the price of tea in China? Like, of course they don't want to.
Of
like,
course.
Thank God no one listened to me.
I know, right? Yes.
So, and I think well, actually, I'm going to kick it over to you, Miles. What is that thing? What are they really saying when they're saying, like, I don't want to set up an environment that's health oriented because of what my kids? I mean, they're projecting, obviously, but like, tell me more.
I think that, and it's also a way to not have to actually work out, kind of like that woman you're talking about. You're arguing for your limitations. There's some research thing I just came across about how it was like with fathers, if they work out, it sort of instills in their kids that that's a thing that they should do for the rest of their lives, daughters or sons. It was specifically with the father. I don't know why that is. I'm sure that the mother matters too. Maybe they just did the research on men. But yeah, it does. When I was doing home workouts, like my daughters will come out and like start to try to do the moves with me in really cute ways, or like become the body weight. I could be push-ups, and they'll just get on my back and like, cool, extra weight. And it's fun. And then they have a fun workout. And I've been able to get a morning routine going. My wife's job, since she has a boss and I don't, I can do whatever I want, which is great. She has these stupid morning huddles meetings, which when I worked in the corporate world, I thought was the most dumb thing ever. I hate meetings. It gets in her way, and so she wants to work out in the mornings, but these meetings get in the way. I'm like, well, you can just get up earlier and do your workout. And so it's this constant battle of like doing that or not doing that. And if she doesn't, then, resistance builds as the day goes on, and like, fuck it, I'll just do it tomorrow. So I'm trying to help her get a steady workout routine. And she's always been the type like, well, if I lift heavy, I'm going to bulk. I'm like, dude, you know how many guys struggle to make muscle and bulk? Like, you're not going to fucking bulk. This is like 80s, like 90s bro science, chicks version of bro science, that they're going to have like too big of calves and not be able to put pants on or something. Like, you're going to look really good. And by the way, lifting weights is like now becoming the single greatest source of personal health you could give to yourself for all kinds of reasons, even over cardio. So it's like, yeah, well, I got this meeting, or I've got to take the kids here. I can take this there. And it's like, yeah, how can I take that from you so you can do that? And sometimes it works, and then sometimes it falls off. And so it's really easy to pin it on the kids as the reason you can't do things, because they come first in many ways, which is true. But just like back to the last podcast, you're talking about the parents being the most important factor, like the sort of cliche oxygen mask analogy, whose mask do you put on first, yours or your kids? Yours. It's the same idea. Like you've got to not forget about yourself. You can't let the kids dictate your personal health and happiness. You got to kind of sort of put yourself first in a way. And then to your point, you're the example. They're watching you. They're sponges. Whatever you're doing, they're learning how to do it. So if you're learning to too much put other people before you first, they're going to learn that that's what you're supposed to do, not have needs or whatever. So that's been a little bit of a thing that came up in our relationship. It's nothing massive. It's just like, oh, that's interesting. Like, look how easy it is to just like punt the day of workout, slip to tomorrow, I don't know if that's what you were trying to get at, but that's the version that shows up at our house.
Well, the kids do what you do. They listen to what you do. They don't listen to what you say. And one of the things that my mom loved me a lot, and she really wants me to be happy. But and the things that she would always tell me to do things that she was never able to do, whether that was do better in school, or work hard, or be independent about something. Like she was very frustrated with my lack of engagement in school, and but she didn't know how to be studious herself. And
that's the example you're following.
Yeah. And I think to underneath all of this stuff is kids rarely does a kid care about how many chin-ups you can do. What they notice is how you treat your commitments. Because when you say we're going to do something and then it doesn't happen, they notice that.
Big time.
They know, they're like, oh, well, that's just a suggestion.
Consistency. Yeah, exactly. It's a suggestion. Yeah.
Yeah. And the parent feels it too, right? Because there's no oomph behind you need to do this, or we're going to do that. There's no oomph behind it.
Can I trust this? Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know. I was helping other coaches start their own businesses, and I was traveling for this, and it's game on. Like if I'm going to help somebody get their business together, we're doing it. And I was hanging out with this friend of mine, and I was like, okay, so we're going to go to these 3 places on Monday. We're going to do, we're going to have a decision. We're going to have a lease signed by Wednesday. We're going to start interviewing prospective clients by Thursday. We're going to have business rolling on Friday, and you're doing nutrition orientations, and it's game on. And then I'm going to leave on Saturday. And that's just what's happening. And so every day we met at 7, and I was like, okay, so we're going to start working at 7. Well, we're going to have to be done with our workout at 6:30. So that means we're going to have to start training at 5:45. And she's like, every day? And I was like, yeah, like it's not a joke. Like it's game on. And she fought me on it, but she showed up, and by 7 we were rolling, and yeah, everything happened. Click, click, click. And it was what I realized is she didn't have the willingness to be uncomfortable by herself. But if I was there,
all good,
and we were doing it together, she was still uncomfortable but less pissed off about it, because she wasn't alone.
Yeah.
And she could see that, like, how the momentum built throughout the day. Yeah. And then by the end of day 4, that's just the way it is now. Mm-hmm. And I'm chuckling, and you know who you are if you're listening to this, but it's like, it seems ruthless when you say, like when you say to your wife, like, oh, well, if you have a meeting at 7, that means you have to be done with your workout at 6:30. That means that you actually have to be, up at 5:15, right? It seems ruthless, except for when you realize there's no other way.
Just do it.
There is no other way. We're going to get into adrenal fatigue, central nervous system management, and then we're going to wrap pretty soon. But Um, when I was in Afghanistan, my buddy Jackson Murray, was he our platoon sergeant? Our organization chart was effed because we were a tactical platoon that the platoon was never together. We were assigned a bunch of different organizations, so
Oh yeah.
we were spread out to hell and gone. And so he was in my platoon, but he was back. He had some other administrative role, so he and I were back at the airfield for most of our deployment.
Which
And
airfield were you guys at?
Kandahar Airfield. This is
not
in
Bagram.
yeah, no, not in Bagram. I did go visit Bagram for a week, which was a strange experience. That's a whole fucking podcast. But I thought I was in the rear with the gear, but the next echelon up is like a different organization. But so we're in the airfield. So we arrive in the spring of 2005, and like we're young and we're figuring out, and we realize very quickly, like everyone realizes on a deployment, that what you've been training for is different than what you're doing, but it's fine. So you learn the battle space, you learn the people you're working with. So for the first like month or 6 weeks or maybe even 2 months, like we weren't really working out. Like we're working 14 hours a day, and like our shifts were switching from day to night. So it's like, so we didn't really have our compasses set, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so he's my roommate, and like I was the fitness trainer for the company. And so I was like, hey, do you want to go to the gym? And he's like, no, I got shit to do. And so we were just constantly like ships passing in the night. And I would like go for a run once or twice a week to try and knock the dust off.
Odd they weren't making you guys do PT.
Oh, who would that even have been?
You guys are just too busy?
Well, our leadership was all over the place. I don't think our actual platoon sergeant, now that I'm remembering,
wasn't there.
He wasn't even there. He was in a different.
So of course you guys aren't.
he was in a different space, and I don't know what his fitness program is. I should reach out to Larry.
Let's get him on the pod.
Yeah. So it was like I started training about 2 months in, and I would bug Jackson, and I would say, hey man, let's go work out. You know, he's like, oh, I feel like trash. Cause like I'm on the night shift. He's on the night shift for a while, and then we go to days. So we're just like, and by the way, night, it's not like night. It's like, it starts at 3 PM and ends at 3 AM. It's a weird.
That is weird. It's not even a swing shift.
Yeah. So, I felt like trash the entire deployment.
Yeah.
And so I started working out, and I just still felt like trash. And 3 months in, I was like, hey, are you ready to start lifting? He's like, no, I feel terrible. And then I said, we're just going to feel terrible now. Just from now until we leave. Yeah. There's no, like, we're working, because it's a 12-hour shift, but you have overlap briefings and things, like it's a 14-hour day. And I was like, there's no, like, we have essentially 9.5 hours off.
Just like, 7 days a week too?
Yeah, 7 days a week.
Oh.
So I was like, we're just going to feel like trash now. From now until we go, you could lift and feel like trash, or you could not lift. And so he's like, nah, I'm not going to work out. And then about 3 weeks after that, he's tapped me on the shoulder. He's like, I get it. We're just going to feel like, we're going to feel terrible. I'm ready. And we started working out together. But the point is like, at some point you have to accept that the rules on the ground are the rules on the ground. Yes. And there are some things you can't drop. Kids got to get to school. Yeah. You got to have food. You have to, like, and when you start to just parse out the actual time available, and I'm a big sleep proponent. It's like, maybe you go to bed at 8:30 instead of 9:30, and you get get up earlier, and you're like, oh, I don't like that.
Can adapt.
Well, after a year of 14 on, 10 off, I adapted. Yeah. That was just the normal. Then I found myself like having coffee before my workout, and I'm like, okay, so I've got 7 hours of free time. Great. And that's life. I think sometimes that's back to the convenience tax, or the inconvenience tax. It's like, do you want to be inconvenienced, or do you want the result?
Bingo. And I bet you guys started feeling better, even though you felt like shit that you were working out.
100%.
Strange.
You at least feel calmer, because you feel like you have agency.
You're burning some sort of anxiety or whatever. Sure, you guys are pretty stressed. I mean, controlling a battle space is not easy.
I think that my biggest gripe about that whole situation was that the food was not good. The food was awful, and it was a big base. I was like,
you didn't have like the Subways and McDonald's and all the shit food that some of the other places had.
No, it was a smaller base. It was a smaller base for that, but it was like too small to like have a cookout in a 55-gallon drum. which I guess we could have done.
But you're not eating MREs.
We were eating, no, like sometimes the DFAC would give us MREs. This is, yeah, I'm getting traumatized just retelling this.
Yeah, seriously.
I don't like it.
Your ass is re-traumatized.
The inconvenience tax. Okay, adrenal fatigue, CNS management. We'll get into this final piece. Is that okay? So here's one. Here you have a grain of truth, right? And this sort of overlaps with my last story about just being exhausted. So if you feel like ass all the time and you have brain fog and you are not sleeping well, or you're sleeping well, but you think you are sleeping well, but you wake up exhausted, and then you have like afternoon brain fog, like you and I fall into this sometimes. Certainly I did until maybe in the last month or two. So, okay, you're right. You do have, you've got a central nervous system management issue, meaning you're not resting when it's rest time and you're not ready when it's go time. So you're in the gray zone, and the gray zone is purgatory, because you can't get your creative work done. You can't get your shitty work done. You can't get your workout in, and you also can't sleep. It's the worst of everything.
It's a version of hell.
Yeah. So, you're going nowhere, man. Where are you going? Nowhere. You're never really anywhere. You're not present, and you're not actually in your creative mind. So how do you break up the cycle? You have to sacrifice something. Tim Ferriss says success includes the ability to let bad things happen. And this is where you have to disappoint some people, including yourself. And you have to, something has to give. And this doesn't mean you get to take a month off work. And this doesn't mean you get to tell your partner that you're not going to take the kids to school for a month. You can't really, not everything is created equal, but there's some disappointments that have to happen. And I'll give you a really tiny example. Like, this is a minor example, but I want to share it. Like, when I started to cut weight earlier this year, I stopped eating after 6, and it wasn't because you can't eat after 6 and be healthy. In fact, there's some pro sleep things you can do if you eat carbs after. But at the time, I was just managing out my day, and I was working out early in the day and had a lot going on, so I had to eat earlier in the day. And then at night, I wasn't able to like have snacks or dinner with my girlfriend or have a glass of wine with her.
Like your bonding rituals.
Yeah, our bonding rituals for hanging out were then going to be altered. And so it was a little bit frustrating at first, realizing that I could have a LaCroix and, go like a glass of water or whatever and just be, hang out with her. But we made it into, okay, we're just going to talk we're going to talk. We're going to have investigative questions, or maybe we'll watch a show that she likes. But we created some goal or some ritual that we could bond over outside of food and drink. And that was really important it was an important element of the change for me, because that was so necessary at the time for the health changes I was making. But I had to be willing to disappoint her, and I had to be willing to change something that was quote unquote working, even though it wasn't working for what I wanted it to. I had to accept some consequences. And that may mean is also at the same time, I would go to bed earlier as I was feeling run down. I wasn't feeling fluey, but kind of. So I had to go to bed earlier. I had to opt out of meals. I had to opt out of drinking and TV. And so there was a sacrifice for my relationship in that way. And I felt pressure. I don't know if Kayla felt pressure, but what I'll say is, like, I had to be willing to deal with that disappointment so I could get the results and the change that I needed. So if you're in this fatigue space, like, something is going to have to give. Maybe it's happy hour with friends. Maybe it is that connecting time with a partner at night where you need more recharge time, so you need to go to bed earlier. Whatever it is, and if you have the more people in your life, the higher the stakes. You have more people involved, and you're going to disappoint some people.
Yep.
And that's at least the short-term pain for the long-term gain.
Yep. Which pain do you choose?
So that is, it's what happens is people in that state of purgatory or the gray zone is they instead of they go back to some of those other things, the ego lifting, the hard workouts, the They want it to work the way it used to work for them. And they keep saying like, oh, this used to be the thing that would help me and make me feel good, but it doesn't now. And that leads them into one of two places. There's something wrong with me. I need to get blood work done. And maybe you do.
Recommended.
But if you're not sleeping and you feel like trash and you're not working out and you're not eating well, blood work's just going to say that's true.
It's going to say, please do those things.
Right. So like, what I talk with my coaching friends all the time. That's what we need. We need 6 more data points on, I feel like trash
before I make it.
It's not just in the mirror. It's also in my blood work.
Yes. But let me read about it some more.
So there's something wrong with me. Of course there is. You can find things that are wrong with you in that state. When you're in that state, there's going to be things that are going to be popping up. And if you have an autoimmune disorder or disease, I keep saying disorder, when you have an autoimmune disease or, injury or, like whatever you have, like I have a stiff neck and shoulder from a variety of things that flares up when I'm not taking care of myself. So you could say like, oh, I need to go back to physical therapy, or, oh, I need to go to the functional medicine doc, and, oh, I need to and you may need a new protocol from your physical therapist. You may need some new ideas, of course, but that's not those are symptoms,
yes,
not the actual issue that you're trying to manage. Mm-hmm. So when you're in the gray zone, that's when it's time to let some bad things happen that are emotional bad things, but not physical bad things. So being willing to disappoint people, including yourself, so that you can make some changes. And that's maybe investing in yourself. Maybe you have to pay out of pocket to see somebody like Grant or me or whoever it is that your healthcare network is not covering.
Probably worth it.
But something's got to give if you're in that spot. And that leads us to the final part of, what are the pitfalls of fitness over 40 or, in any area of your life: disease, injury, special circumstances. And I've got some videos on my Instagram and YouTube of me trying to restore it's like I was trying to do a push-up, and it took 6, 8 months, maybe a year before I could do one push-up from the floor after my bicycle accident. But I started strength training using my definition of strength training within 3 months of the accident. And I bring up like a bad accident or a disease or a, debilitating life circumstance, because my definition of strength training is any activity that prepares your central nervous system or your body, your physical body, to improve function and transcend performance. So by that definition, when I was on my back doing broomstick bench press, which is like essentially a weightless pushing motion.
You're preparing your brain for that motion.
I'm preparing the nervous system to do that. And I'm also finding the issues with the joint structures. So if I'm doing a push-up with a broomstick and it hurts, or bench press with a broomstick and it hurts my shoulder, then I know I don't need to go to 5 pounds. Right? I didn't even have dumbbells in my hand. I was like, I want to make sure that this motion is safe. And then I'll maybe move to resistance, or maybe I'll just do pause and isometric and squeeze, and work on things. But my definition of strength training is preparing the body to transcend performance and function. And that may mean something that is, according to your ego, not really lifting, not hard enough training, not, okay, cool. But I'm here to win. I'm not here to, bench press 315. I'm here to continue to be healthy and functional in my 90s.
Yeah, exactly.
So
health span, lifespan.
I'm okay with losing some battles to win others. And so in those circumstances, I would just look at your definition of training. What's your definition of it? Is it helping you? Back to like arguing for your limitations. If you have to have things exactly the way they were 10 years ago or 5 years ago, if you have to exercise between 5:15 and 6:30 and it has to look like exactly this, then is that helping you? Is that getting you to where you want to go? And like Miles said, or are you using that as a easy way to delay
or not do it,
having to take action?
Yeah, those parts can get really tricky. sneaky, really smart, ingenious ways to get you to punt the workout.
Well, the smarter you are, the smarter your ego is.
Yeah, that's a bad truth.
Your ego is as smart as you are minus about 1 IQ point. It's
Little to do with emotional intelligence.
yeah, and there's some puncturing questions you can ask yourself. My favorite one is if someone says that they're not ready to get in shape or not ready to write their book or not ready to do the work, I say, okay, what would it look like for you to be ready?
Flip it. And then that's the brain thinking about solutions.
Yeah. And oftentimes, well, if you don't have an answer, it's probably a made up thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Or a young part of you that was trying to keep you from perceived pain of some sort, whatever that means. I was actually doing some work with someone around working out recently. He just couldn't even do, or trying to get the lowest hanging fruit. Like, can you do 25 burpees in the morning for like 3 minutes? And he had all the excuses. And then I was like, see, something's not adding up.
What's an excuse that he would do?
Oh, my kid's waking up. Oh, I got to make breakfast, or I sleep in, or sometimes I'm just too tired, or just all the things that are just like easy solutions to minus what's underneath. Like when the solutions are like a duh, there's usually some emotional stuff in the way, just like this woman you're talking about. So we did some internal family systems work, parts work, somatic work around it. And we got to do some parts of him. He was like, the part said, I am afraid to, I want to say, it's my fear of being seen. Like he really desperately had wanted to be seen his whole life. But we got back to this moment where he sort of got traumatized for being seen. And him showing up as his best self physically is being seen, like literally. Like this guy's a former Marine, like you just to get after it. And like you said, it's easier to do in a group setting with a coach. When you're by yourself with some of these parts, you have to do it, then they'll take over if they don't trust you to do it. And it was a big emotional release, and we'll have to see how many more times we have to do that and see if it unlocked this ability for him to start with the low-hanging fruit like that. But sometimes it's like these unconscious emotional resistance blocks, and these parts make these in the ego, because parts come from the ego, make these really creative solutions for you not to have to do it. And you just buy it flat out. Like, oh yeah, well, my daughter wakes up and I can't work out if she's there because she bothers me, or whatever the excuse is, The outside observer is like, dude, that's an easy workaround. But for someone who's really struggling with some sort of wound, that's generally where it comes from. You sort of heal that, get that out of the way, get that part to be amenable to actually helping you. Then it's like, oh, just like my daughter's like, climb on my back while I do push-ups. Let's make it into a game. There's a solution. Now you're doing 25 push-ups or whatever you needed to do.
That's right. And most people are unkind witnesses for themselves. I was listening to the James Whitmore podcast. I think it's called Mind Your Business, but I listened to hundreds of episodes and I was fascinated by his approach. And his answers to questions were always different than the answer that I was coming up with, because it was kinder and more compassionate. And he's very delicate with other people's dreams. And I was laughing and I was like, oh, you feel like you're not enough. So all of your actions and by you, I mean me, I feel as though I'm not enough. So my goals and dreams and the activities that I'm undertaking are all flawed.
Why they wouldn't be enough for the world if I'm not enough. Yeah.
So because of that, I can't respond with compassion to myself.
Bingo.
And then back to your friend, if you're in that state, then you are everything that you do is going to be a problem.
Yeah. That's why we got to get to the core of some of these things. It doesn't make logical sense. But when there's a strong resistance, it's like a trailhead, as we say. Let's go in. Like, what is this resistance? And when we get to those seminal traumatic moments, then it makes logical sense. Like, oh, this thing happened, and these parts came up, and now they protect me from being seen, because when I'm seen, I get kicks in the balls for it, or punished, or whatever the story is. And then you have a worthiness wound. I must not be worthy as well. And you start having complex on top of complex about what's happening. And you don't even know it's showing up when you just try to work out. It's pretty funny.
Yeah. This is a big one. This is a big one. This is why it's so nice to have a great community and a great environment, and like being a part of something and being witnessed in a healthy way, in a happy way.
Hell yeah.
It's a fun thing. It's therapeutic for me because it teaches me to be kinder and more compassionate to myself too.
Yes. Yeah, we all need a version of that.
So all of these they apply to anybody of any age, and oftentimes part of it is habitualized, routines that may have worked in one moment and then don't work now. And some of them are just like incomplete, poor definitions of things, like what's good training, what's hard training, what's useful training. And then some of it is just realizing that anytime there's a need to control, like, the Orange Theory workout isn't good enough. I mean, it's pretty good. Like you're
better than zero.
Yeah, you're gonna get some good stuff going on. It's like don't letting the perfect drive out the good.
Yeah, perfect's the enemy of good. Yeah. Yeah, just start and then you can iterate. Build.
That's right. And be compassionate with yourself. Like I talk myself out of crap all the time, and I just, I usually catch it later that day or the next day and go, oh, okay. So I'm just going to do an imperfect job today, and that'll be fine.
You're at least doing the job.
That's right. So, weapons grade compassion for yourself.
There you go.
And your health will be a reflection of that self-love that that you are willing to give yourself. And then you will be the example to your family and friends. And then you will be the beacon of light in a dark world.
Love it. That's a great t-shirt. Weapons grade compassion for self. You get some t-shirt ideas. Maybe we'll have some we can sell on the podcast at some point.
Amen.
Some ideas.
Let's do it.
Yes. We'll have some guests for y'all soon. Share this podcast with anyone you think could benefit. Trying to make it get bigger. It is getting bigger, just word of mouth, which is quite amazing. We haven't really promoted it at all yet online. So if it's helping you, see if it'll help someone else, and then we'll have some guests, and that should definitely help things multiply. Other than that, we'll see y'all next week. We're out.
Peace.